Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have Mr. Gerry Shreiber with us today. I'm sure most of you are familiar with today's speaker. If not by name, you'll certainly recognize many of the products that his company produces. Over the past couple of years, our speaker has become well known to our students here at Williamson. Many of you students have talked with representatives of his company at our career fairs as you seek employment, and some of you have been fortunate enough to have been hired by his company. Most of you heard him speak last spring at one of our general assemblies and know what a wonderful speaker he is and how amazingly interesting his story is. Behind the scenes, he is a generous donor to Williamson, helping us to meet our mission. For the families and the friends of our students here today that might not be as familiar with Mr. Shreiber, there is another way you might know about this man and his company. Some of his products are household names. I'm sure many of you enjoyed such products as the Super Pretzel. Anyone? Icee, Luigi's Italian Ice, Bavarian Pretzel, Mrs. Good Cookie, and Minute Maid frozen snacks. And if you ever stopped at Wawa and purchased any of their baked goods, they probably came from his company. Something else that makes our speaker stand out. He did not attend Williamson College of the Trades, but without hesitation, I would call him a true Williamson man. His life story fits what Williamson is all about. He started with little means. As you guys know that saw his presentation earlier, growing up in Chester in the projects, having to share a pair of shoes with his brother. He took a chance, got some work experience, built his own company into a huge success, and he was able to do that by following the same character traits that fit our core values of faith, integrity, diligence, excellence, and service. Our speaker began working at a very young age with his father, who was a produce merchant. He then became, at 18, a machine shop apprentice at Kulicki & Safa, a machining company. All his life, he has felt a deep loyalty to this company because they hired him even though he had little experience, and then nurtured him and taught him as he learned the machining trade. By his mid-20s, he had saved up enough money and got together with several partners to open a machine shop. And later on, his business started making specialty machine parts and doing well. Looking for bigger and better opportunities, he sold his small company and used his money to buy a bankrupt soft pretzel company for $72,000 in Pennsauken, New Jersey in 1971. He named his company J&J Snack Foods, hired 8 employees, and started baking pretzels with some old baking equipment. He started this business venture even though he had no experience in the food business, and he did this while following his instincts, working hard, hiring the right people, and believing in himself, and believing that he could make this work. And his gamble paid off. At that time, soft pretzels were not as popular as they are today, but he felt that soft pretzels were an up-and-coming snack and set out to convince sports stadiums, movie theaters, and other vendors that soft pretzels would be the next big thing and they should get in on it. And it turned out he was right. He was there on the ground floor, and his business grew and grew and grew through 149, I think at last count, straight quarters of profit and growth. As his business grew, he decided to branch into other snacks and built his company through a series of small acquisitions. Today, J&J Snacks bakes 2 million pretzels a day, has 3,000 employees, boasts $1 billion in annual sales, and has made Forbes magazine's list of the 200 best small companies 7 times, has been profitable every year of its existence. That's something not many companies can say. Not bad for a kid from Chester. Pretty good. In many ways, our speaker reminds me of our founder, Isaiah Williamson. Because just like Mr. Williamson, he was extremely successful in business, made a great deal of money, but then decided there are more things to do with money than just spend it on yourself. Over the years, he has made very generous donations to many charitable institutions that help people to get an education, and Williamson is included on that list. Ladies and gentlemen, help me in giving a warm Williamson welcome to Mr. Gerry Shreiber, President and CEO and founder of J&J Snack Foods.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm not as tall or as big as Michael, but I share the same heart. Michael, Bill, and the staff at Williamson, I am privileged and honored to be with you today with the graduating class of 2016. Thank you all very much for making me feel welcome, together with some of my senior staff that is with us today to the left. Williamson has an unbelievable history. 3-year school, that's 1,000 days if you guys are counting backwards. 1,000 days, where it takes deserving teens, children, and gives them a free education, 100% free, building craftsmen and character. I wish I, at the age of 17 or 18, had the opportunity to be a Williamson student years ago. My story, a little bit different, but I share some of the same values that you guys have learned here. It's true. I was kind of raised in Chester, Pennsylvania, in the projects, William Penn projects, and it was on. When I say it was on, that project was on. My father worked for Food Fair, worked very hard for Food Fair, stayed there probably a little bit too long till the end, and we moved to Atlantic City when I was, I guess, 11, 12 years old, maybe 11 years old, and he went into the fruit and produce business down there with his father. I graduated high school in 1959, and if you ever maybe coming out of a school, you didn't know what you're going to do. I don't mean for the summer. I mean for life. And I was probably in that position in 1959. And although I began college for what was a semester, the financial burden and the other twist of fate, which I'll describe to you, changed my career path. First of all, first twist of fate, I was married and a young father at 18. Don't be going, that's true. I was a young father at the age of 18. Keep in mind, this is 1959. I did get a job at a company called Kulik & Soffa, who were in the embryonic stage of semiconductor equipment then. And I got a job as a machine shop apprentice, $1.50 an hour, which was 15 cents more an hour than I was working for before that. I was not a very good machinist, but then again, I was overpaid. But fortunately, I was quick, I could learn, and I worked on things like sun and hone, drill press, milling machine, Bridgeport, engine lathe. One time in just setting a cutting tool in there and turning on the college had started to spin, I cut the stuff out of my hand, and I'm sitting, somebody is training me, and I put my hand, John, you'll appreciate this, in my pocket. And it was a tan or brown pair of pants, but I didn't want anybody to see how I had just messed up. And as I'm standing there, the blood is coming out right through the pants. And this is a true story, and it's like I didn't know I was going to get in trouble, whatnot. Well, I didn't get in any trouble. I got about 9 adhesives around my finger, but it taught me, a little bit of a lesson then. But fortunately, at this company for a couple of years, I was mentored, and later became a mentor. But here I am, a father at 18, and how am I going to plan my career path? Well, like you guys have been doing, I worked hard, I was thrifty, I thought of tomorrow, and I had help along the way. Suddenly, it's 1971, and I'm doing okay. I sold my machine shop and was looking for another opportunity. Actually, I sold my machine shop and I was supposed to stay on with the new owners, which was a New York Stock Exchange company in New York. But even though I had sold out physically, emotionally, I still thought it was mine. So we had differences almost from day one, and I was terminated within a year, within 14 months. So I was looking for something else to do. And this, again, is a twist of fate. I'm walking from my lawyer's office in Philadelphia. I had a daughter then who was about 11, 71. She wanted a waterbed. True story. I passed a shop on Spruce Street, 1631 Spruce Street, that had waterbed. Come in, see a waterbed, and I walked in to the store, and they had a few waterbeds on the store. They weren't expensive in there, but there was something, a part of the scene that just didn't fit. The man, who turned out to be the owner, sitting behind, was in his late 60s with flaming white hair. Hardly a hippie-style storefront waterbed owner from the 70s. Well, I struck up a conversation with him, and one thing led to the other, and he told me that he had invested money with a couple of kids, students, that is, and the students had gone off in the summer and left him with the waterbed store, and he was looking to sell it. And he's also telling me about a soft pretzel business that he had started some years ago. That business was bankrupt. There was an auction coming up. He was owed some money. People were offering him like nothing. And almost immediately, I had a bond with him, and I looked further into the soft pretzel business. And that September 1971, I went to the bankruptcy auction after looking at the business a little bit. And there was a lot of things about the business then that were raw and ugly. Plant was in good shape. It had 8 employees. The employees were mad. Their checks were bouncing. But again, this twist of fate, I wound up raising my hand in the courtroom, and I was awarded the assets of what was J&J Soft Pretzel Company then. It had 8 employees, some $400,000 in sales, and some very old baking equipment. Immediately after that, I said, what the hell did I just do? All right. But again, that twist of fate led to the development and the success of J&J Snack Food. Today, 44 years later, almost 45 years later, we are a $1 billion company operating across the whole U.S., Mexico, Canada, and in Asia. Along the way, I was really fortunate to gather good people. I hired a truck driver for Christmas in 1972. Today, he's our senior vice president with us, sitting in that row, Bob Rodano. We hired a young kid out of Drexel in 91. 91 or 92? 92. He was an apprentice. He grew quickly. I sent him to California. I promised him it'd only be for 2 or 3 years. 15 years later, I brought him back, and today, Gerry Law is our senior vice president in charge of multiple plants, as well as our marketing and R&D. Somebody who literally fell into my lap, Tom Weber, who was a West Point grad, captain in the Army, joined us 16 years ago, and he is dedicated and responsible for 7 plants. And together with him is Glenn Welsh, our chief engineer, that works tirelessly and dedicated, not for 20 or 24 hours a day, but sometimes 26 hours a day. About a year and a half ago, again, fate smiled on us, and we hired John Connell, who is JC, and we put him right into a war, running our largest plant and being responsible for maintenance in Pennsauken. So these twists along the way, these burdens, these good fortunes, all have a common denominator: people, culture. Let me tell you another twist of fate. How many are you familiar with churros, if you know what they are? Just hands. Okay, if I asked that question 20 years ago, nobody would have raised their hand. But in 1981, through another relationship, we had a bakery in California, and they wanted us to make their churros, which were being sold in a bunch of stores called Whimsy. We geared up for it. We put a fryer in between a pretzel line and the offices. We hooked up stuff. We got the ingredients. We learned how to make it. And on New Year's Eve day in 1982, we got a call. The parent company was closing down. They were going bankrupt. Sorry about that. Now, I had invested some money on this line, didn't have a product to make, so again, what are we going to do? Did fate deal us a bad hand? Or did this opportunity have aces in it? We wound up buying the inventory, developing the product line, made almost a fatal mistake by calling it Groovers with 3 O's because it had grooves in it. And that didn't sell or go over well. We fortunately, got back to calling it what it really is, churros. And today, between Tio Pepe and California Churros, we're the largest churro producer in the world. In 1987, on my way to California, a business associate died, and I stopped off in Detroit, Michigan to go to the funeral. When I say stopped off, I'm flying out in the morning, I stopped there late morning, and I have a flight into LA that night. But at this funeral, I struck up a conversation with somebody that had just left Icee. At that time, Icee was a regional company in California. You know what Icee is? You sip it with a straw, you eat it with a spoon. And they were going through some hard times. One thing led to the other, and we wound up buying Icee. At that time, Icee was doing about $13 million a year. Not bad. Should have been successful. It wasn't. Today, and again through our good fortune, hard work, and good people, Icee has sales, Icee alone, of over $250 million annually. So these twists of fates help propel the company and build character. As you guys, all of you, 74, 75 of you, go on through life today, you're going to find obstacles, challenges in your way. And as you begin, and commencement is not the end, it's the beginning. Your fate is in your hands. Don't be afraid of it. Hold it. Shape it. Twist it. You are Williamson grads. God bless you and congratulations.